What up? It's a Friday night on the MLB schedule. Already a couple of rainouts that we can throw out the window as we get to break this one down. There's so much happening right now. NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. And you get to lock in for a big-time Friday night, one of my favorite nights of the week as far as baseball goes. I'm Pete McCarthy, hanging with Terry McBride. Subscribe to the show, get involved in YouTube, the chat. I'm seeing beer mugs in there and little cocktail drinks. As soon as I saw those in the chat, I was like, man, I really should have popped a beer for this show. A little Friday night energy, Terry.
I don't think anybody would really, begrudge us a nice cold one on a Friday night if we wanted to here. Talking baseball, 5:45 leading up to lock or close enough to lock. Hopefully going to leave me a few minutes to get my lineups in at the end of the show. But yeah, I love the slate we got to talk about. And what could be better than sitting around talking about a big slate of baseball on a Friday?
A cold beer while you do it would be a little better, but it's all the way upstairs. I don't think I can make that happen tonight. I'd have to, ditch out, come back.
I'll improv a quick plug for Odd Shop or something if you want to take a run.
Yeah, man, I got my banquet beers. They look cool. It's this is the way I like to go down here in Carolina.
I'm an IPA guy, so I love the IPAs. My dad always criticized me. He's a Bud guy going way back, right? So he'll always order a Bud, and I'll get a Cane Head High, blah blah blah, whatever it is, and he'll always just, oh, you fancy pants beers, but I have 4 of those, 6 of those, and I'm in the bag. I could drink 12 Budweisers and, I don't want to say drive a car, but, something like that, operate complex machinery.
You can handle a golf cart, you put it that way on the course.
Right. Yeah.
But I used to be IPAs and I like to have them. I think the first beer, maybe the second is for taste and you feel it in your mouth, right? And all this kind of stuff. Once you get to the third beer, it don't matter no more. You're just guzzling them down. So that's when I switched to the banquets, and then just throw those down. Used to be the Budweisers.
So thin, though, at that point, I can't make that switch because the thinness, the texture, all of it, it just doesn't do it for me after.
It's like you're going to water.
Start on one or the other.
You wash out the bitterness. You make it happen. Hey, like I said, subscribe, the whole 9 yards. You can get notifications when our shows go live. That's a great thing to do. And you should also check out today's free premium tools and data at Awesemo, which are MLB player rankings, NBA ownership projections for Mavs Warriors Game 2, UFC pro plays, and NHL top stacks. I told you there was a lot going on, and I didn't even mention the PGA Championship. So it is happening. We got a little bit more than an hour with you, so let's start diving into this slate. Not as big as it was supposed to be. The Yankees, White Sox rained out in New York there. Terry just got stuck in that rain walking with his dog. And then Colorado, I don't know what the hell is happening in Colorado. It's like snowing there, and they're going to have a messy weekend. So that's a whole thing to keep an eye on. But at least we know early, those 2 games off the board. So we'll start with the Creative Park in Baltimore as the Orioles will be hosting the Tampa Bay Rays. Hey, yesterday we actually saw some right-handers hit some home runs out to left field. Giancarlo Stanton, Robinson Chirinos were able to get it out. They kind of tucked it down the line rather than going to where the Death Valley truly is now in Baltimore. Let's start with the Tampa Bay Rays. Favored in this matchup. They're going to split the pitch in a little bit. Jalen Beeks, Brian Yarbrough, so probably not really usable in the classic slate here. What are we making of the Tampa Bay Rays, let's say offensively, going up against Tyler Wells and Baltimore in this gigantic ballpark now?
Yeah, I wrote up the Rays on the site. They were my featured stack of the day. They were ranked at the top of our top stacks tool earlier. Let me jump back and make sure that's still true. Looks like that's still true. Top of the board for probability. And what I really like is they're positively leveraged with a pretty strong leverage number up at the top of the board there. You've got single digit ownership up and down the lineup for the Rays on DK. Only a couple guys trickling into the double digits. It's low, 13.2% on Wander. You're perfectly happy to take that ownership for a player like him. But I think they're effective 1 through 9 with this lineup. They're really interesting. And they're going up against a pitcher with a 16.2% strikeout rate this season. It's a 4.35 xFIP. He's only walked 3.4%. So he's not allowing a ton of opportunities. He's not a terrible pitcher by any means, but he's a guy who did give up 41.1% hard hit with an 11% barrel rate out of the pen in 57 innings last year. He struck out a lot more hitters last year at 29%. So he was kind of more effective despite worse contact last year. This year, contact's a little bit better, less effective with the strikeouts. Just don't think he's really there. Maybe it's a better spot for some sequencing than some power output, but I do like some of these home run hitters on this team. I think it strings together really, really well with a lot of cheap hitters from Yandy Diaz, who's underrated all the time. Wander Franco, Harold Ramirez, another very underrated, solid contact hitter in there. Ji-Man Choi. Like I said, it really does play 1 through 9. I can argue for Isaac Paredes with multi-position and nobody on him. I can argue for Brett Phillips who quietly hit 13 home runs and stole 14 bases in 292 plate appearances. So there's a lot of quality up and down that lineup for very cheap prices. I like the spot a lot.
Yeah, when I ran my crunches earlier, it was actually a couple of guys that I don't think you mentioned that were at the top for Tampa Bay. Randy Arozarena. I love humping, looking for the homers. I mean, that's the way I like to play, and even in this ballpark and the way it plays out, he's still trying to get lucky there. But Arozarena and then Mike Zunino, I don't think there's any ballpark that really holds him in. I always like to have a little bit of Mike Zunino because you never know when you're going to get that day. He hits a couple of home runs for you at a cheap price, the catcher position. So, worth a taste there. But Tampa Bay, certainly one of the offenses that I have on the board here against Tyler Wells. Tyler Wells, pitching wise, didn't look like he came up a whole lot here. He ended up in one of my 100 lineups when I gave it a run. So
there's one you can delete.
Yeah, run through and work your way off of it. We're not
seeing much on the bone for Wells there.
No.
Probably wouldn't go to either of the Rays pitchers. Like you said, it's going to be a combined one, but it's not like it's going to be a pure opener and then a bulk relief. Like Beeks can give you a couple innings off the top. Yarbs can go for a couple innings himself. So I don't really love the split there. Just to go back to those Rays hitters, by the way, I skipped over those guys. I was trying to get out of the rant quicker than I normally do. Sometimes I talk for a little bit too long, but I love Zunino and Randy Arozarena. 2020 last year for Arozarena. Slow start this year. Zunino also a slow start, but Zunino had a better barrel rate than anybody in the league last year, over 375 plate appearances, hit 33 home runs, barreled the ball more than Shohei Ohtani did. Just not enough plate appearances to qualify for the leaderboard. So love that spot there. I don't know if I'm going to get to any Orioles on the other side. Maybe some mix and match from like the top 5. Did you get any Orioles coming up in your crunch there?
I zeroed out the stack because I tend to zero out about not half, but a good chunk of the games when I look at the leverage and play with it with the top stack tool there. That is my go-to on at Awesemo and something you want to be able to check out. But I'm not stacking any Orioles, and it doesn't look like a whole lot of Orioles popped up, if any at all, as one-offs or as a couple. I got Santander, who had a couple yesterday. Santander. I Gary Thorned it, but I guess 3% on him, but not a lot of Baltimore here. It's tough going against the double arms in Tampa Bay. I hate going up against.
It's a pair of good guys. It's a pair of good pitchers and a good bullpen in general. So it's not really one that you really like to target. I do think guys like Jorge Mateo, under 1% ownership from site to site, kind of cheap. He gets on, he'll steal you a base. He might hit one on the line and knock in a couple runs. So like a Cedric Mullins, Austin Hayes, Trey Mancini, Anthony Santander, Jorge Mateo is kind of interesting. The back end is just flat though. Tyler Nevin, Ramon Urias, Chirinos, Owings. I don't really need much of that. So maybe a few limited stacks on the top end, but it wouldn't be much. I'd prefer them as one-offs, frankly. Like a Santander one-off, I think, like you said, is good. Cedric Mullins, speed and power. Austin Hayes, plenty of pop there. So maybe some one-offs, but not a priority in any way.
Question inspired by the chat. What was your first beer, Terry?
My first beer.
Someone mentioned Busch, and I was like, I think Busch was the first beer I ever had, and I don't think I ever had it again.
It might have, I'm trying to think, it might have been a Bud Ice, believe it or not. I don't know if those
That's
still
a good
exist, but that was my buddy Ken used to have, his older brother used to get us, he had a fake, he was still in high school, but he had a fake, used to get us beer on Jewish holidays when we had them off. So we would all hang out and drink. And I think that was what that was the first one that he ever got us. The second time I ever got drunk was on gin and tonics that he would make in cups roughly this size, about 3/4 gin, splash of tonic, wave a lime over the top of it and hand it to you. I was like 13. I spent the rest of the afternoon throwing up in their bathroom after drinking like 4 of them.
That sounds
that
right.
was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Such good ideas when learning how these things work in life.
Right. It's noon. It's Rosh Hashanah. Let's drink a bunch of gin and tonics.
Somebody mentioned Natty Light in there.
Natty Light was definitely on the board. Yeah.
Natty Ice was one too. Anything that needed ice at the end of it, so like it sounded cold, even though it wasn't on ice, that was usually not a great beer to be jumping on. I don't think that there are any IPAs that end in ice.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, that's anytime you're tacking on something like that to make it sound stronger or cooler, it's probably best to be avoided. I think Narragansett was the worst beer I've ever had.
Oh, no,
like I'm sorry. Not Narragansett. The other Rhode Island beer called Drum Rock.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh God, it was so bad. It was like Beast and Red Dog mixed together.
We got a couple of
And then
PBRs in here. That's good. Be proud. If your first beer
I
was a
love
PBR, that's an
PBR is my
all-time
go-to.
classic.
Yeah. If I'm going like, just standard, can of beer, PBR is the go-to for me. I love PBR.
I'd love to transition to Dodgers Phillies. I'm trying to think of like maybe a Yingling for the Phillies fans out there. That would be your first beer. That's what was that?
America's oldest brewery.
Yeah, there you go. I like a Yingling. Dodgers Phillies, fun matchup here. How about Julio Urias? Can we talk about him a little bit? Because this is a guy who is supposed to be an elite pitcher, is been good before, but his strikeout rate is under 20% this year. He's been burned a few times. The expected ERA still doesn't look bad, but he makes me a little nervous here, especially going up against this powerful Phillies lineup. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's not really a spot I would want to tangle with. If the sites had priced him down a little bit more, I'd be more interested in getting there. 4.5% ownership for 9,200. You can argue that's still a little bit low, just given his talents in general. Over 185 and 2/3 last year, 26.2% strikeout, solid marks across the board. Very, very good for hard hit at 30.3%. This year, the hard hit's still exactly the same, 30.4%, a 7.1%. The barrels are up a little bit, but not to like a threatening degree, but the strikeouts are just gone. The pitch count is down. I don't think he's cracked 90 pitches so far this year. At 82, 75 the last outing, 65 before that. So the pitch count's not there really. He's giving up a lot of sequencing. He's giving up some power. So I'm much more inclined to look at the Phillies side of this one, and they're pretty under-owned. They're pretty affordable on both sites. No Bryce Harper in the lineup definitely is a downgrade, but there's still some pretty lethal hitters in that lineup. So I'm kind of looking into the Phillies side of this one. And then I think I'm looking at the Dodgers stacks here as well, rather than the Ranger Suarez side of that.
Yeah, as far as the Dodgers go, got to a little bit of that on my end. The Dodgers are always, it's just a matter of making it work, right? With the price tags you're going to get on one of the premier lineups in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. They're expensive. That's always the thing with the Dodgers, but I think there are enough cheap spots in a lot of lineups where you can probably get to some Dodgers 5-mans. And what I like about rostering the Dodgers is on a lot of nights, their back four, their bottom four is as good as most top fours in baseball. Like Chris Taylor, Cody Bellinger. Tonight it's Hanser Alberto and Gavin Lux in there. But on a lot of nights, the bottom four hitters in this lineup could compete with basically anybody. So you can get to a lot of combinations of these hitters. There's some multi-position at the bottom of the lineup that helps make things work. Gavin Lux with second base and outfield, second base and third base on Hanser Alberto. On FanDuel, there's even more multi-position through the top end of the lineup. They're all fairly cheap over there. So I think you can get to them. I think they're viable here. And Ranger Suarez, only a 17.6% strikeout rate this season after 25.6 last year, putting some guys on base with a 1.38 whip. He's been okay for contact as well. Neither team is like facing a pitcher that's giving up ridiculous premium contact, but both pitchers are putting the ball in play a ton. So I think it's worth targeting with both of these really good offenses at low ownership.
And obviously a ballpark that's worth targeting always, Citizens Bank. You get a chance to hunt for those home runs. We'll note at the bottom end of the Dodgers lineup, I play a lot of showdowns, so I get burned by this guy all the time. But Hanser Alberto, he's going to get about 2 plate appearances tonight, and he's going to be out of this game because he's in there to face the lefty and Ranger Suarez. So, look, some people, the attitude is, hey, I'm going to look for a big shot in those 2 at-bats. I don't care. I'll play the matchup. But, he's probably going to be out of this game. What do you like 6th inning? Once Ranger Suarez is out, you're going to see that swap at some point in this game. One of those guys.
And Hanser's not really the guy you want to target in that situation either. 13.3% hard hit with a 3.3% barrel and 35 plate appearances. Last year, only 2 home runs and 255. So he's not really the guy you want to take that. Hey, I'll take my 2 plate appearances because he'll hit me 2 home runs maybe some nights. Not the guy for that.
And then this Phillies lineup specifically. Who jumps out at you? I mean, Nick Castellanos, you're not looking at a big price tag on him as the righty-lefty matchup against Urias. You have a lot of pop here. It doesn't have the same depth as the Dodgers lineup, but the dudes in the middle can make some stuff happen, especially Castellanos' price is pretty nice for what he is capable of. And then I guess even like a Johan Camargo in the 7th spot, you could take a shot on.
Yeah, Camargo's been interesting. He was a relevant play. I needed a base hit from him a couple nights ago to make a jump in the standings and got it. And then he got me back the other way by getting a base hit and having somebody jump ahead of me. But he's been relevant as this team goes, tries to turn the lineup over down at the bottom of the lineup. Somewhat interesting. Multi-position switch hitter, very cheap, very under-owned, 0.5% on both sides. So you can work him into the back end of stacks. I really like featuring the top 6 here. Gene Segura hitting cleanup is a weird little spot for him. 5,100, 4,100 across sites. He's 294, 349, 471 this season, creating runs 34% better than average, 6 home runs, 5 stolen bases. Can't really argue with the production, but on a team with Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, it's weird to see Gene Segura cleaning up, but you got to love Hoskins up top. Alec Boehm, I think, is very interesting at 3,000 on DK, 2,900 on FanDuel. No ownership to speak of. He's slashing 300, 336, 408, creating runs 9% better than average, 2 home runs. I really like the way this lineup comes together 1 through 6. And I think, like you said, Yohan Camargo, you can get some value out of. I don't love the idea of Odubel Herrera or Roman Quinn down at the bottom of the lineup, but if you've got a couple shares of them, if you're stacking up a bunch of Phillies lineups, I don't really have much issue with it.
Yeah, Boehm is a good one. He's not someone that you're going to get the home runs out of necessarily, but it's a great spot in the order to be, especially, again, no DH. So the lineup rolls around a little bit better. You get some RBI opportunities in that second spot, even behind a Rhys Hoskins. So, Boehm in a good spot, good price tag on him. Anything further, Dodgers, Phillies, you want to hit on? I guess we didn't get into Suarez. Is he playable against his Dodgers lineup? You said you prefer the Dodgers, but does that mean you eliminate Suarez?
I don't think I would throw him here. The Dodgers haven't been all the way up to snuff against left-handed pitching so far this year. If you wanted to throw like 1 or 2 darts at it at 7,200 on DK, you could, but I don't think it's a really great spot. Not until the strikeouts come back for him. Like I said, 17.6% strikeouts, not the 25% guy from last year. So I don't necessarily think they're going to hit a ton of home runs and really blow them up, but I don't love the spot for the pitcher. And then just to hammer the Alec Boehm point home one more time, 45.5% hard hit rate, 17.9% strikeout, and only 6% walk. So he's hitting the ball hard and he's putting it in play a lot in the 2-hole for no money and no popularity. So I think that's a really interesting spot within that stack.
And that's when, it's not too often you get the number 2 hitter in a lineup as talented as the Phillies at that price tag. So good one to check out there. All right, let's go to Toronto, another place where the ball could certainly launch out. The Blue Jays implied run total close to 5 tonight as they host the Cincinnati Reds. Not a bad pitcher that they're going up against in Luis Castillo, but the strikeout rate hasn't really been there. Same thing on the other side for Hyunjin Ryu. Let's start with Toronto. How do you like them in this matchup against a pretty good pitcher? Castillo might be one of the big trade deadline pieces we're talking about the next few months.
Yeah, you got to have a feeling that Castillo is going to get moved at some point this season. Presumably everything's going to come around coming back from injury. He's only made 2 starts so far this season. So, everything's kind of tempered within the small sample. 9 2/3 innings, 17.9% strikeout rate with a 10.3% walk. And he's allowed 39.3% hard hit with a 10.7% barrel rate. So all of that is very limited sample. And there's a little bit of concern around the strikeouts, but he's a guy that tends to take a little bit of time to warm up into a season anyway, if you look back at previous seasons. So I expect that his talent will eventually win out. We see guys slow to come back from injury a lot of the time. Last year, he was at a 23.9% strikeout rate over 187 2/3. Not his best season for strikeouts, but he was very good with limiting hard hit, limiting contact. So I think he's going to get back to being a quality pitcher, but I don't necessarily think that's going to be tonight. And against this lineup, it's a really good lineup that he's going up against. They don't strike out very much. They put the ball in play. They hit it hard. So I'm not really going to Castillo. I think the 11.7% on the field is maybe a little bit high. I know the price is really good for his talent, but based on the lineup, based on the strikeout rate where it is right now, I kind of want to see Castillo do it at least once before I start going back there. I do like the pitcher. He's on my dynasty team I talk about all the time. So I need him to come around, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
You would know this then. I'm thinking back. Didn't he stink for like the first month or 2 last year?
Yeah.
And then turned it on?
Yep. Yeah. He had a rough start last year. And I think in maybe 2019, I want to say same story. He's a notorious slow starter in general. Plus you pile on the injury and all of these things. So there's reason to believe that he's going to come around again. Going back 2 years ago, 2020, that short, weird season that we had in the pandemic year, 30.5% strikeout rate, 28.9% over the 2019 season. So he was down in strikeouts last year too, while healthy. That's the concern, right? If that was a legitimate dip from those numbers, and then he comes back weaker than that, there is maybe concern going forward. But like I said, I want to see it before I start rostering him, but I also want to see him struggle more before I write him off completely.
Sure. I don't have any Blue Jays stacks here. I did end up with quite a bit of George Springer as a one-off. So we'll see if he can launch one out. This Blue Jays offense, what's your strategy with them?
I actually like that spot. I don't mind taking some shots at Castillo here. You figure if he's a little bit limited in the pitch count, if he's struggling with the strikeouts, yielding some contact, I can take some shots on what is one of the better lineups in baseball in a vacuum when we're talking about name brands and talent and all of that. And I think they're a little bit underpriced on the FanDuel slate. Everybody well below 4,000 over there. Anytime I can get Vladdy at 3,700, I'm happy to ride with 14% of the field and just build him into lineups. He's still 55 on DK, 7.1% owned. So I like the spot in terms of ownership and leverage over there. Top 3 hitters in the lineup, Springer, Bichette, and Vladdy, all below that 7 point at or below that 7.1. Everybody after them is in the twos, the ones in the twos as far as ownership goes. So I think from a leverage perspective, you can definitely do it. They are going up against a quality pitcher in terms of what he's done in the past, but again, struggles right now. So I think you can throw bats at Castillo in at least a limited fashion.
And I think that's the difference. Yeah, I'm crunching on the DraftKings prices, and you're usually crunching the FanDuel stuff. So, you have that kind of disparity in prices. You can have some different strategies as far as, the Blue Jays go. And they don't have a whole lot of value when you look at the top stacks tool on DraftKings, but might be a different story over there on FanDuel. On the other side of this,
FanDuel for sure.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, you're never looking at a whole lot of runs here. Hyunjin Ryu, he's been someone you can get after a little bit here. Not a lot of strikeouts. The expected ERA isn't very good this year. So do you take some shots at the Cincinnati Reds team?
It's such a lousy lineup. It's tough, right?
Doesn't matter who
they're
it is,
very
right?
cheap. They're very low owned. So I do think we can get away with it. I would rather it was against a righty pitcher, I think, because then you get some Joey Votto, you get some Mike Moustakas going on the positive side of splits. Not the Votto, I'm really worried about lefty against this lefty. Moose, I would prefer on the other side, but I do think there's some upside there. I'll take Tommy Pham in a lot of situations. I like the power and the speed combo, decent bat. Matt Reynolds, Tyler Stevenson. There's no Brandon Drury in the lineup, which is a weird thing to say as if that was a bad situation, but he's been playing really well for most of the season. So that's kind of a downgrade. Tyler Naquin, lefty, down toward the bottom of the lineup. I don't love it. We're talking about a lineup going up against a lefty that's overly left-handed. And one that's been one of the worst in baseball. Minor shares just to attack the lack of quality in Hyunjin Ryu. 15.1% strikeout rate so far this year, 45.2% hard hit. There are certainly reasons to attack the warts on the pitcher, and he's a guy with only a 20.4% strikeout rate over an extended sample last year. I just don't like the bats we'd be doing it with, so I don't want to get overextended to Reds here.
No, I didn't get any Reds offense really in this game against Ryu. I don't have a ton of Ryu either. Is Ryu playable in your mind with the way that he's going? There's got to be some better options out there.
Yeah, big slate. I think there's just a lot of better options than a guy like that. Low strikeout rate guy in general, and struggling so far this year.
Want to have that ceiling. Hey, make your best bets in 30 seconds or less. Odds Shopper features hundreds of bets daily to give you the edge you need betting NBA and NHL player props. With expected win percentages and ROIs included, Odds Shopper uses the same DFS projections we use here at Awesemo to filter out the best bets available. Odds Shopper also features a parlay builder with optimized parlays and an arbitrage tool that identifies risk-free, guaranteed profit bets that you can make across sports books. You can find the link to Odds Shopper in the description of this video, so head over there now and start making smarter bets today. I like this line of thinking. It's not what you're going to find on Awesemo's site, but Bean Dude writes in the chat, I'm stacking Brewers since we've been talking about beer the entire show. Can't argue against it.
I like where his head's at, and I like the strategy for DFS. I actually really like the Brewers today. They were a stack that I wrote about, and they were shining through pretty well in my my power index. So I'm with them on that one. I think that's a good call.
Me too. Okay, well, we'll get to the Brewers in a little bit. Let's start with a fun pitcher tonight, Tariq Skubal, who is really been doing a great job. Had a big write-up in Fangraphs today, which means he's probably going to give up 10 runs tonight. I think, right, like Carlos Rodon got all that love for what he was doing. Mike Petrillo is writing all this stuff for MLB.com, and then he gets hammered on Sunday Night Baseball and is done in the second inning. It's just the way it goes. But Tariq Skubal, I mean, it really has been one of the few things that has gone very right for the Tigers this year. Very playable against this Cleveland team.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a very good spot for Skubal. It's a kid that's come out with a 28.3% strikeout rate so far this year, which is an uptick from what was a good rookie season, over 149 and a third, 25.9% strikeout last year, a 4.06 xFIP last year that he's improved to a 2.72 this year, a 108 whip this year that was at 1.26 last year. He's improved the swinging strikes. He's cut the hard hit down. He's cut the barrels down, which is by far the most important thing. Last year, he had a 5.5% hard hit, home home run rate allowed on the back of a 45.1% hard hit, a 13.9% barrels. Really struggled with the home run ball last year. This year, that's down. It was a 1 or 2%. It was a low
2 home runs
number
allowed all year.
There you go.
And it was in the same game.
Right. There you go. So, I mean, it was a low number, and he did that on the back of this year, 35.8% hard hit, 5.7% barrels. He chopped 10 percentage points off the hard hit rate. That's phenomenal progress. He's not really priced up that much, 9,500. And this is a spot the last time out, he was carrying the weight of the world on him in terms of popularity. He was in like the 35% range. Tonight, mid single digits on both sites. Absolutely. I think we can fire away here. I think he's under-owned. Very good spot here. He's going up against the Guardians lineup that is, pesky, has been good against right-handed pitching. 19.2% strikeout rate, ranks 4th in baseball. There's that. 14% better than average creating runs so far against righties. There's that. A 157 ISO, 2.33% home run rate. I'm not that worried about the power on the Guardians. Maybe you'll worry a little around the Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes. Everybody else in this lineup is kind of contact oriented, some speed oriented players. I think Skubal could have a really nice game for us here at low ownership.
Yeah, I like Skubal in this spot very much. So, it's funny just playing the numbers. This is why I love doing this show, because then you actually sit back and think about things a little bit more rather than plugging into a spreadsheet and just looking at what comes out. Because I ended up with a ton of Cleveland, but offensively it stacks against Skubal. But reading the Fangraphs article, he really has done a great job of limiting the home runs, and there's a reason for it. He's not throwing his fastball as much. If you love all that stuff, want to nerd out on it, go check out the Fangraphs article. But this isn't the same guy from last year. He's giving up home run after home run. So, I don't think Cleveland's necessarily the direction you want to go, even if the top stacks tool does like them a little bit. I guess it kind of goes between your heart and what the numbers are telling you generally. Aaron Savali on the other side. You want to jump on that, Terry? Did you want to jump on that?
Just real quick, I do on the Guardian stack side of that equation, just to put a cherry on that. They're drawing a lot of ownership against the pitcher here. So I just kind of want to be on the other side of it. I'll take some hedge stacks of Guardians just in case that contact, bugaboo pops up again, but it's going to be limited shares. And the guys that I want, the Jose Ramirez's, the Franmil Reyes's, the Ahmed Rosarios of the world, are all drawing a ton of popularity. I'm actually surprised how highly owned they are against this pitcher. I would have if you showed me this slate at the beginning of the day, I would have definitely thought that the public would be more on the pitcher than on the Guardians here. So that's kind of surprising and concerning when looking at trying to stack Guardians. They're interesting because they're inexpensive and they come together in a lot of interesting ways with all the multi-position that they offer. But I don't love it. Like I said, there's not a ton of power outside of 2 hitters. I'm going to be much more on the Skubal side of this one.
No, you know what? I messed up. Actually, you're right. The leverage is in favor of is against Cleveland here, and we changed the boom bust tool, so I was adjusting some things. I have it backwards. That's why. And
a lot of that is
we won't talk about my top stacks today because they're a little off, and I'll make a little adjustment. It's just I just got to put the other thing first before the other, the subtraction sign. But yeah, so that's why I'm like, no, the numbers aren't clicking the way that in my head they are, and then you figure it out real fast, in the middle of the show.
I love discovering things while we're on the air about a slate and just seeing something.
It's always good. I totally messed this up. Great.
Yeah, but I think it helps with just hearing how we think about and spot these things and how it how it clicks into place in terms of the slate as a whole, because everything's relative to everything else on these slates, right? None of it exists in a vacuum. So I think it's definitely interesting to talk through these things.
Absolutely. Aaron Savali, do we have to talk through him? It hasn't been pretty for him this year. An expected ERA over 5.5. He's striking out a little bit, 20+% of the plate appearances against him. But he gets the Tigers. Or what do you make of this spot for Savali?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's really matchup driven, 5,800. So matchup and price driven, I'll say on the DK slate. He's drawing a lot of ownership over there, 22.5% for kind of a low end pitcher. Not a ton of strikeouts in general. 22.3% is fine, but that's up from 19.9 over 124 and a third last year. And you really don't think of Aaron Savali as a strikeout oriented pitcher when you think about him. You mentioned the inflated numbers, a 1.74 whip. So there's been a ton of guys on base, despite a reasonably strong 6.6% walk rate. So just a lot of hits going against him. XFIP is sitting at 4.6, a 43.9% hard hit allowed, a 13.4% barrel rate within that. Average exit velo at 91.9. It's just kind of pointing toward the Tigers here, but I don't know if I love getting the Tigers because they're kind of popular. They're very cheap. They're easy to stack, but they've been really, really struggling. So I'm not sure I love this one on either side. If I had to go gun to my head, I think I would take the Savali shares, especially for cheap as an SP2 option, despite the popularity on DK. He just kind of works over there, and he's going up against a team that's 30th ranked with a .093 ISO against righties, 30th ranked with a WRC plus sitting at 70, so 30% below average, 27th for home runs with a 1.73, and 28th for strikeouts with a 25.4% rate. So I do think there might be a couple bonus strikeouts hiding for him. I do think that, he might get through the lineup a couple times clean, but like if you took the pitcher, the contact profile, everything about him, you would say, I want the offense on the other side, except this offense is just terrible. So, it's kind of a stay away spot on both sides as far as I'm concerned, but I wouldn't tell anybody they were necessarily making a mistake taking the DK value.
You would think with the season starting a little later, some of these teams be able to hang around and make it to Memorial Day. But not the case. Not the case for quite a few teams.
Well, this was about the time of year that the Tigers kind of caught fire last year. They were 7 games over after May. So maybe that's, maybe that's coming in June this year, but underperforming team. I thought they were going to be better than this.
Yeah, no, and the one thing that's gone well is Skubal. So we both like him in this spot against Cleveland tonight. All right, next up, Seattle and Boston at Fenway Park. Just hit the lock button on Trevor Story again, right? Why not? 6 homers, 2 days. Let's get it. Just hit 3 homers again.
Finally getting their money's worth out of that guy, huh?
Yeah,
not bad. Not a bad performance from him over the last little bit here. So sitting at 230, 317, 413 for the season, but he's up to a 183 ISO, 111 WRC plus. So signs of life from Trevor Story for sure. He's going up against Robbie Ray though. How much are you diving into those Red Sox stacks against right here? Are you not a Robbie Ray believer?
Well, you know what? I don't want to give too much on my stacks now because I just fixed it, and I don't have a ton of Boston here, but a little bit against Robbie Ray. Well, Robbie Ray hasn't quite been Robbie Ray this year in Seattle. He's had some nicks along the way here. The strikeout rate is fine, but Robbie Ray is never a great pitcher. He is a good pitcher who won a Cy Young Award. So I'm not scared to go up against Robbie Ray. I was last year. I made note of Robbie Ray last year, but it's always a little different when you change your atmosphere, you sign the big contract, and you end up in a new spot, even if he feels comfortable going back to Fenway Park, where he's pitched plenty over the last couple of years. But I'm not scared to go up against Robbie Ray. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and honestly, I would argue that Robbie Ray is back to being Robbie Ray instead of saying that he's not Robbie Ray, right? We saw the one great season last year. I wrote about him in my article on the site. Everybody's heard me talk about it a few times, but he cut his walk rate in half last year. He was at a 6.9% walk rate, 32.1% strike rate. Strikeouts were a career high, walks were a career low. No wonder he turned into a great pitcher, a Cy Young Award winner, like you said. The contact was still concerning, 42.9% hard hit with a 9.8% barrel when guys were making contact. He was just staying off bats. 15.5% swinging strike rate. This year, that's dipped down to 14.9. He's walking 9% of hitters, so he's not quite back to double digits, but he's only at 25% strikeouts, 42.3% hard hit with an 8.5% barrel. So there's definitely cause for concern. He projects out fairly well for me. I think he's worth getting to. 8,000 is a phenomenal price for his general ceiling, for his upside, for what we know he can do, but it doesn't come without warts. It doesn't come without risk. I think 21% ownership at that price on DK is probably low though. I think it is worth getting to Robbie Ray in that spot, but I think I would also take out a fairly high amount of Red Sox hedge stacks going against that because I'm getting nice power marks for the Red Sox. I think they're going to be on base. I think they're going to be sequencing against this pitcher. Gun to my head, I'm not betting on Robbie Ray here, but I will have shares of both sides of that equation.
And I think that makes sense. Robbie Ray has the ability still to go out, give you 6-7 innings, rack up double-digit strikeouts. The ceiling is always there, but he's not going to be that as consistent as he was last year at that, where, there were some slates where it was, hey, have this guy 65% and feel good about it. Not in that spot, not that kind of slate, and up against a Boston Red Sox team that seems to be waking up these days. So we'll see what they could do. Anyone in particular on Boston that you target against Ray?
I mean, everybody knows my affinity for Bobby Dahlbeck at the end of the lineup there. Nice little home run mark on Bobby. I got to shout him out because he's always low owned. He's always cheap, but he has let me down so far this season, struggling. 1 home run, 165, 255, 247. The contact profile still there. It's all right. 44.8% hard hit, 9% barrel. He's generally stronger than that in terms of the contact. The strikeouts are down a little bit at 28.2%, and he's walking 8.2%. I was talking about him at the beginning of the season in terms of the walks jumping up a little bit this year, and it's slowly progressing northward. He was a double-digit walk rate guy in the minors, so I think the power is going to come back. I think the walks will be there, and he'll improve as the year goes on. He only cost $2,100. The reason I'm shouting him out is he's very cheap. He's under-owned in the back of the lineup against a guy who does have a propensity to give up plenty of hard contact. So a hitter like that could just be one of those sneaky home run pops that you need on a slate like this. That said, if you're really asking me who are the better hitters to go to on the Red Sox, the answer is Rafael Devers, JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, and Trevor Story. Go to that quartet of hitters and bolt Bobby Dahlbeck onto the back end of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to, you got to have a dart to throw sometimes. And Dahlbeck definitely one of those guys that gives you a home run, and, you feel good about the Red Sox are that top stack. He ends up in that optimal lineup.
So a lot of Red Sox in my top of my home run model, though, too. I should say that at another, ding against Ray here. Devers sitting third. Renfroe's not on the team anymore. JD Martinez is sitting 7th, and Dahlbeck sitting right behind him in 8th on a day where there is not a lot of power showing on the board. All the lefties are really sapping the power out of this slate, which is interesting.
How about, Michael Wacha on the other side? He's always one of those kind of frustrating guys as far as DFS goes because he doesn't rank up a ton of strikeouts, but he's been pretty good over, the last year and a half, what he was able to do last year in Tampa Bay. So how does that affect what you do with Seattle with Wacha?
Serviceable pitcher. We were talking about him in Discord right before I got on the show. He's sitting at a 19% strikeout rate with an 11% walk rate, a 4.23 xFIP this season, not inducing a major swinging strike rate, only a 23.1% CSW. The contact profile is fine. He doesn't give up a ton of premium contact. Last year, he gave up more, 42.7% and a 10.5% barrel in 124 2/3 last year. If that comes back and the walks stay where they are, he's in trouble. But the way he's pitching right now, I think at the price, if you wanted to take a couple shots, it's fine because nobody's doing it at 7,400. I just don't know that he's got the ceiling to really get you where you want to be at that price. If he was in the 5,000s, even the low 6,000s on DK, I think it would be a lot more justifiable. I like the Seattle lineup. I know they've been, a little bit up and down this season, but there's a lot of talented bats in that lineup, and they've been better against lefties this year. But for against righties, 19.8% strikeout rate. They're 7th best in baseball, and they've created a runs 12% better than average, which is 11th best in baseball. They've just struggled for power in the split. So I think Wacha might be okay, but not really good for DFS here. So I'm not really rushing out to go grab him. At the DK price, a couple darts might be all right.
Yeah, one of those guys is just he just kind of is a wet blanket on the whole slate. He's not good enough doesn't go deep enough into the game, doesn't strike up enough guys to play him a lot as far as a pitcher, but you don't really want to play against him a whole lot either, though the implied run total for the Mariners is 4.5, but probably not where you want to go. Twins Royals next up on the board. This is in Kansas City. Devin Smeltzer, Daniel Lynch, the pitching matchup. Not exactly household names here, but not exactly a household names, on this Kansas City Royals roster as a whole. I like Byron Buxton tonight. I'm curious where he ended up on your power chart, because he is popping up all over as my number one hitter tonight. As I try to find the home runs. That's where it's popping for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Buxton is sitting. It's 18th overall, but he's within. We have 2 hitters up in the high teens, and then everybody else. The magic number that you want to be at for like a good chance in my model is 10. And there's a bunch of guys at like 10, 11, and he's one of those guys right in there. So he's right in with the best chances of the day as far as I'm concerned. I like Buxton a lot here. So I definitely think it's a spot you can go to some Twins bats. Buxton is getting a ton of attention. 6,000 on DK, pulling 16% ownership, still 4,200 on FanDuel, pulling 22%. I think it's totally justifiable against a pitcher with just a 22.5% strikeout rate, guy who's allowing a 48.2% hard hit rate with a 10.6% barrel. I just, I don't love the popularity there. I think you can get very interesting with some of the bats in that Twins lineup, though, if you're looking down the lineup. Carlos Correa, under 10% owned, coming back to the lineup here. Very cheap on FanDuel, just over 10% owned. Kyle Garlick, min price on both sites, righty bat hitting third. That's easy to get to and definitely makes this stack really interesting. Jorge Polanco, Gary Sanchez, plenty of pop in both of those bats. I can take Max Kepler as a lefty against this lefty. Jose Miranda is kind of interesting for cheap down at the bottom of the lineup. There's a lot to like about this Twins lineup in this spot here, particularly around the top five. Kyle Garlick makes that top of the lineup very interesting. It's only 32 plate appearances, but he's hit 3 home runs. He's got a 333 ISO. He's made hard contact 60% of the time with a 15% barrel rate, and he's at the dead minimum.
Yeah, that's why I got a lot of Kyle Garlick tonight, along with Byron Buxton. A little dash of Gary Sanchez, too, your old friend with the Yankees, right-handed pop in this Twins lineup. So, as you mentioned, a lot of different ways to go. On the other end of this game, well, I guess we could talk about Lynch. Is he playable as a pitcher for you? We're talking about how much we like this Twins offense tonight.
Yeah, it's not really a spot I'm looking to get to. 6,700 again. It's another one of those spots. A lot of pitching has been the same. We've seen a lot of middling pitchers come out with strong performances on nights where a lot of other guys don't go off, and we don't really have a lot of aces. If Robbie Ray doesn't have that ace caliber game tonight, we lost Nestor off the slate, so there's not a lot of threats of monster scores. So at 6,700 and only 6.8% ownership on DK, you can take some shots on that. There's plenty of strikeouts in the Twins lineup in general. If he gets through some of the power hitters a couple times over, I could see him having a reasonable start for that price. 8,001% owned on FanDuel. I don't think I'm going to go there. If I get 1 or 2 shares around the edges, I might not rush to delete them, but I don't love the contact profile. He's not a big time strikeout pitcher, walks too many. So not a priority for me.
Well, let's make note of this for Garlick. Someone in the chat has mentioned he always gets pinch hit for, and looking at his game log, that is true. He has played one complete game all year in his 16
a hitter
games.
Like this, though, like I said, that other guy that with Hanser Alberto, you don't want to do it. He's got no power. He's got nothing.
Yep.
This hitter hitting third in this lineup, he'll see 3 plate appearances, even if they pinch hit for him, probably. He's min price on both sites, and he's got pop. So that's the kind of hitter that I will take that shot on, and the kind of price that I will take that shot.
That's a great point.
But it is a good shout out by whoever said that.
Yes. Yeah. It was one of those things to, make note of, because if he is 0 for 3 and he gets pinch hit for in the 7th inning, be like, what the heck? You got to understand what you're getting into.
Catching up to anybody if you sit
for 2,000. It's worth the shot to get those. As you mentioned, 3 play appearance where he is in the lineup makes a big difference as well. Other side, Smeltzer against Kansas City Royals. I really didn't get to any of either side. How about you?
Yeah, Royals are a team I don't really target all that often. The ownership is fine. They're affordable. So if you wanted to use them as a value stack, as a very low owned value stack going up against Smeltzer here, I think it's a perfectly playable spot. Smeltzer, a very small major league sample, but not many strikeouts at the major league level. Plenty of hard hit, plenty of contact. So you can throw bats like Whit Merrifield, Andrew Benintendi, Bobby Witt Jr., maybe some MJ Melendez and a Carlos Santana at him. That said, no Sal Perez, definitely a big downgrade for this lineup. So, you take what you get. They're very low owned. I don't mind the home run power on MJ Melendez, and then the hit tool and speed oriented guys. They could put together a decent game of sequencing and speed here and be somewhat frisky, but without Sal, it's a big downgrade to this lineup. So low priority, but maybe a couple value stacks.
All right, so let's get to the Lone Star Showdown here. The Texas Rangers, the Houston Astros. Christian Javier on the mound for Houston. He's had a nice start to the season with the strikeout numbers, close to 30% strikeout rate there. And then Martin Perez going for Texas in this spot. I mean, more strikeouts have been better than you typically see over the course of his career, but probably not a game I'm rushing to here. Let's start with the Astros offense. How do you like the Astros offense going up against Martin Perez, who I think he just had a good start against Boston, one of his former teams last time out. The numbers look decent, but the track record is never a guy that you fear in this spot going up against him.
Yeah, Perez is a pitcher that I've on and off targeted over the years. Is a guy who typically lets the ball get put in play, 20.8% strikeouts this year, 19.1% last year. I will play this Astros lineup against basically anybody, and particularly when they're somewhat under-owned. And I think they're kind of affordable for who they are in general. No Jordan Alvarez, definitely a downgrade to the lineup, but you still have Kyle Tucker in there. You've got Julio Gurriel. Jeremy Pena is an interesting rookie. Chas McCormick is a guy I shout out all the time for the contact profile, 40.2% hard hit with a 12% 12.2% barrel, 4 home runs in 116 plate appearances so far this season from the 8th spot. He's a guy that not a lot of people get to because he doesn't come up a ton naturally in optimizers. He's always toward the back of the lineup, but he's always low owned, affordable, nice little addition to stacks. If you're not going to roster Martin Maldonado for the differentiation, maybe you should go to Chas McCormick there. Maldonado, somewhat interesting where you do need a catcher from time to time. He does pop for power. He does not do anything else. 3 home runs this year, creating runs 62% below average, hitting 122, 208, 244. Take what you get from Martin Maldonado and be happy about it. Top end of the lineup is spectacular. Everybody knows that.
Yes. On the other end, Christian Javier going for Houston. I feel like I want to match you with the pronunciation of the Latino names. You're extremely good at it. I'm a little jealous. I try to be good at it, and I'm not always. But Christian Javier going for Houston. Yeah, this is a pretty good spot for him against the Texas lineup that is starting to heat up, but took a little while to get going this year.
Yeah, it's a solid pitcher. I think he's going to be in the rotation pretty much full time the rest of the season now. He's kind of proven himself in that role, the ability to pitch multi-innings out of the pen or come in and take starts and take the ball for extended innings as a starter when they need him. So I really like him. I like the spot, 29.1% strikeout rate over 25 1/3 this season, keeping guys generally off base. An 8.7% walk is a little bit higher than you'd like to see, but with that walk rate, a 1.11 whip for a young kid still finding his way, I think is still pretty solid. 11.9% swinging strike is not bad. It's down a little bit from last year, throwing fewer strikes in general than last year, but a lot of those numbers were out of the pen. So we'll see what he, amalgamates to as a starter here. But I think he's a very effective pitcher to throw against a lineup that is not great. I know there, are good hitters who are struggling like Marcus Semien up at the top of this lineup, but overall Texas this year, let's see where they're sitting. A 130 ISO ranks 21st in the split. They've created runs 11% worse than average, which is 26th in baseball against righties. They've hit some home runs, 2.97% home run rate is 11th, but a 23.4% strikeout rate. So I think there's plenty of Ks on the bone there for him. I like the spot for Javier. 8,800, probably the right price on DK. 24% ownership. I'm fine going around the field. Maybe you can nudge a little bit above. He's probably negatively leveraged at that, but I don't think it's tragic. I can pull that up in a sec. I think the FanDuel price at 7,800, that's kind of low. And he's not seeing the requisite ownership for being that low priced as of my last update here. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see where he's coming in on our board. So on our board, he's got a 6.6% probability of being the top FanDuel starter. Everybody's in the single digits today. Nobody cracks 10% on a big slate. 6.4% top value rating with that low price, pulling 14% ownership. So technically he's at a negative 7.5 leverage score. I think for the quality, for the ceiling of fantasy points and strikeouts that you can get from this pitcher in this spot at that price, we can ignore that leverage score. I think I can own Christian Javier at or around the field, if not beyond it in this matchup, just for price and opportunity on this slate. There are not a lot of high upside pitchers on this slate. I would put Javier right next to Tariq Skubal, maybe Sean Manaea, maybe Robbie Ray if he's going well as one of the higher upside guys on this slate. So I think that price really makes things work.
Well, it's interesting. And how about a big picture question for you? Those of you that subscribe to Awesemo, you have access to the Top Stacks tool every night, the Top Pitchers tool. On the Top Stacks tool, we've always had the leverage score, and we always talk about the leverage that you have with particular lineups. With the Top Pitchers tool, we've added now leverage. So that wasn't there last year. How much do you look at that particular column when you're deciding what to do with the pitchers, when the pitchers are typically a lot more predictable than who's going to be the top stack on a given night?
Yeah, I think honestly on both sides of that equation, both with the pitchers and with the stacks, the leverage is very, very important. And it's important to call out too that we've changed it recently. It used to be a direct ownership, top probability minus ownership. And now we've worked in the value so that it's counting the value rating 25% and the top X probability is count 75%. And then we subtract the ownership to get to the leverage score. So most of the time I will directly say, all right, negative leverage, bad, positive leverage, good. But on a slate like this, where he is so cheap on that FanDuel slate, he operates as a value pitcher. And I love targeting value pitchers on the FanDuel site because I think the way that, that hitters come together, you can make a big difference by going to cheaper pitching when it's effective. And he's got a similar ceiling to any other pitcher on this slate. So for that price, I'm willing to take some of that negative leverage. I think it offsets, and it's not necessarily fully accounted for in our value tool yet. I'm not sure if that's something we could ever capture completely properly because of how relative it is to everybody else. So it's just an interesting spot. It's difficult to explain my way through properly in relation to the tool, but I do think it's a strong spot that is maybe sneaking by the slate at 15% ownership.
No, I think it's good. There's so much information. There's so many different ways to parse it and to look at it. I mean, I love what we did with the top stacks tool. And I say we, like I had any input on it, but actually that's what I used to do is bring it to an Excel file and do almost the exact formula that Awesemo, everyone ended up using there to incorporate the value a little bit. So it's just kind of funny to see. I think it's a smart way to go about it, a good adjustment as far as that goes. So definitely something that people can utilize with that top stacks tool. I mean, that's the first place that I go every single night, putting together these classic lineups and then the top pitchers tool and working your way through. So I always enjoy hearing how people utilize these tools that we provide in different ways. Make them sing. It's one thing to have it. You gotta make them sing. You gotta know how to play the guitar. You can't just walk up, be Hendrix.
That's it. And somebody, I forget who it was, but one of our regulars and a good person in chat had mentioned the other day, what do we care about leverage? I want to grab that guy because he's most likely going to be the top scorer of the night. So what do I care about leverage? And I was trying to explain that, there's a difference. And he basically put it on the table. Like, you can have anybody and I'll take that guy. I said, yeah, if I can have my $7,200 pitcher against your $10,000 pitcher, and if he doesn't go off and I can get to within 10 points or so with my $7,200 pitcher, I bought two bats that you can't afford in the same, like if you're stacking Yankees and Blue Jays, let's say, there are two bats in there that I can have that you can't have. So I'm going to catch you more often than not based on having that leverage, based on having that savings that was baked in. And that was a night where I forget who it was, like the Orioles pitcher happened to go off or whatever. And it was like a perfect example of like, see, this is what we're talking about. I wish I could remember it a little bit better, but that also ties into something that I've been meaning to mention. And I'll be quick. I know we're short on time. When you're building stacks and when you're using Fantasy Cruncher in baseball, you specifically do not want to set a minimum salary on these things. And I gave an example the other day. If you would set even a 34,000 out of 35,000, leaving 1,000 on the table, which a lot of people think, hey, that's a ton of salary. There was a 4-4 Yankees White Sox stacks with all 8 of the top bats, like 1 through 5 type of bats, that had ruled out if you had set that minimum threshold of 3,400 the other day when Severino was pitching, it would have cut off above Severino and you would have had none of the pitchers below him in price. You would have been restricted to 5 guys who were kind of overrated, overowned at the top of the board. And you'd be cutting out all these other combinations and all these other possibilities. So you do yourself a very big disservice and you disqualify a ton of potential lineups by setting a minimum price in Cruncher. So it's just not something you do.
No, it's baseball. It's relatively random. And one of the things when it comes to leverage, just quickly, and we'll move on, that I always think about, the goal is not to say get to 200 points or, have the highest projected lineup. The goal is to win. So you want to increase your chance of getting ahead of somebody, not just scoring, a crazy score. If you end up with a 300 point night and still finish 10th out of 200, let's say, you're not doing very well. You want to, if you can win at 220, let's say, that's better. You want to win. So that's what leverage is about. It's about beating the people around you, which is ultimately the goal. If you're looking to make money on this, you're not just looking to, have big numbers, good night that way. You want to beat everybody else. And that's
Adam puts that the best out of all of us, I think. And the way he puts it is you don't want to be the guy who is right about the top scorer at the end of the night. You want to be positioned to make the most money when things go pear-shaped and it doesn't go the way that everybody in the slate expects. 40% of the field expects it to go that way. If it doesn't go that way, you're in good position if you're on anything else, right?
Yeah, no, I play a lot of the showdowns. I mentioned it a little bit last night, that Sunday night showdown. If people like playing the baseball showdowns, man, Rodon was like 85% owned. If you put Goldschmidt and Molina and had a bunch of Cardinals at the top, I mean, I think it was the same person might have finished like 5 of the top 7 spots because they went a total different direction. You get washed out a lot of nights, but the one night it hits, boy, you're cleaning up. You're making the Awesemo Hall of Fame on a night like that. If you got to have that Awesemo avatar, which you can check out, download it at awesemo.com/avatar. You place top 3 in a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Boom, you're a Hall of Famer. You get all 3 spots. You become can we make something up like a super Hall of Famer? Maybe we'll shower you in Bud Ice and whatever your first beer was. Maybe it'll be a good beer because if you're doing that, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. So check it out again, awesemo.com/avatar. Place to the top 3, over 5,000 contendants. Tell us about it. Tweet the win to @AwesemoHOF. you win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, even though you could probably afford it at that point. So check that out. Make that happen. Only one free month could be awarded to a user per calendar year. But that's a good spot to be in. Are you a Hall of Famer?
Indeed. I've been up there a couple times recently. I don't tend to tweet my screenshots. So I actually made the offer the other day, and I'll extend it out there again. If I happen to drop into a Hall of Fame place on tonight's slate, you guys can tweet that screenshot of my lineup out toward our at Hall of Fame little handle there, and we'll put it all into a raffle. Everybody who tweets it at us, and we'll create a little bit of engagement, and we'll give my month away to somebody from the raffle if I happen to finish in the top 3.
That's awesome. I feel it tonight. I feel it. I think it's that kind of night. We're going to give it out on a Friday night.
Been hitting it hard lately, I got to say. I've been not to pat myself on the back, but I've been hitting it pretty hard lately. So it's in play, guys. Let's see.
Well, what is hitting well for you lately? Because it's been such a weird baseball season, like no runs in April. All of a sudden, the last week or two, everything's starting to pop. You're starting to get those 10+ running, score games where you really can stack it up. What's hitting for you?
I mean, it's been such a weird pitching year that kind of fits right into the way that I approach a lot of these things. Like I was saying before, I'm all about a lot of value pitchers on FanDuel. The first big win that I ever had, I think, was with Joe Ross on the mound, right? So, I mean, I'm always looking for pitchers like that. He was like 7,200 that day or something. I'm always looking for these low end, value type pitchers so I can stack up a few additional bats that the rest of the slate can't afford in combinations. And that's kind of worked out well so far this year. Plus, I've had a few Yankee stacks that have just gone off. So the homer in me has gotten paid too.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good team to be following. If you're a Tigers fan, it might be a rough year, but Yankee fan, you're doing all right. And Carlos likes Hall of Fame. You think you coined something that we can run with here?
All right, maybe that's what we do if you get all of the top 3. That's the Hall of Flame.
Yeah, you get the T-Mac Hall of Flame, baby.
There you go.
Get some fire out there, and with the Awesemo logo, we'll make a new avatar and it'll spice it up. Washington Nationals, Milwaukee Brewers. You're saying you love the Brewers tonight. I know a lot of questions about Eric Lauer in the chat. Dude has been a stud all of a sudden. All this Corbin Burns, he's like pedestrian the other day against the Braves. Eric Lauer striking out 35% of the batters he faced. Baseball, baby.
Gotta love it, right? And it was a pitcher that I was saying at the beginning of the year, like, oh boy, I don't know if I'm going to ride with Eric Lauer this year, but he has absolutely proven me wrong so far. Priced up to 10-4 on both sides, getting a lot of ownership attention on both sides. I think it's totally warranted against what I think is a pretty lousy lineup outside of Juan Soto, Nelson Cruz, and Josh Bell. Get through those guys a couple times over. You're going to find your strikeouts. You're going to cruise through this team pretty easily. Nats are very inexpensive if you wanted to target Lauer in a weird way with a contrarian stack, but I don't really like it. If I can have Juan Soto at 2.5% ownership on DK, 8.8% on FanDuel, I'll take some one-off shots. 0.5% ownership on Nelson and Josh Bell, I might take some shots, but really I do like the Lauer side. I'm going to have a lot. I'll probably be under the field on both sides, but I'm definitely going to have a lot. 35.5% strikeout rate, best on the board, 2.52 xFIP, 14.2% induced swinging strike rate. The hard hit is there, 44.4% hard hit, 11.1% barrels, but guys are just struggling to make that contact against him. That does support the idea of getting to, maybe a stack or two as a hedge of the Soto Cruz Bell part. But yeah, I think it's a strong spot for Lauer. I think the public attention is totally warranted. You can be at or around the field on him and be fine.
Yeah, a small amount of national stacks here, just with the I think the ownership for Lauer kind of pushing that a little bit, where if things do go off the rails for him. But I got a lot of Lauer pitching tonight in this spot. And then the Brewers lineup. I mean, look, you're going up against Eric Fetty, not exactly a top line pitcher here for the Washington Nationals, and Milwaukee feeling good after beating Max Fried the other day, and Castanero with the big home run there. How are we liking Milwaukee in this spot, even if they're not a team with necessarily positive leverage, at least not on DK tonight?
I think it's one of those teams where the overall ownership is thin enough that you can definitely get to them. It's easier on the DK slate. Their prices have come down the other day. There were like 6 hitters in this lineup, all over 5,000 on DK. They're being a little bit friendlier now. So you can get Luis Urias at 4,800 multi-position eligible, 11% owned. Rowdy in the middle of that lineup hitting cleanup, only 47% owned, going up against a bad righty. That's a monster spot today. Rowdy Tellez against this righty. I think that's really a good spot to clean up. McCutchen back in the lineup, 3,900 under 10% owned. Hunter Renfroe and all his power. I love that spot as well. Righty is totally fine for me. Omar Narvaez, if you need a catcher on DK, under 10%, 4,100 in the middle of this lineup. Christian Yelich, starting to catch on a little bit. I think it's coming. I said it the other day. 5 home runs, 185 ISO, 185 ISO, 117 WRC plus, so 17% better than average creating runs. It's a frisky enough lineup, and they're cheap. I don't love the ownership, but I think you can get to them around the field, and it's not really a night where you have to sweat all that that's ownership on the stack side. I think there's enough different combinations that'll come together where you can just kind of offset that.
Take some shots on them on this night. And as someone mentioned in the chat earlier, we've been talking about beers all day, so jump on the Brewers. I mean, look, again, it's great logic. You can't argue against it. Other way, Eric Fetty. Eric Fetty. I don't know. We've spent a whole lot of time here.
I don't know that I rostered him once through last season. I haven't rostered him this season. Probably won't be rostering him next season. Yeah, no, not a DFS pitcher for me. Is serviceable, middling, kind of a real life starter, but yeah, not a DFS pitcher. Even at price 6,500. Yeah, not against this lineup in this.
Not tonight. All right, we actually have some late games tonight after not having any baseball late games on Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know what to do with myself when it's 10:30 here on the East Coast and there's no baseball on. It's like, come on, let's go. The basketball games are all blowouts every night here. I don't know what the heck's going on there.
Yeah, I've been watching
hockey, which is fine,
but yeah, the hockey's been there. Hockey's been fun. Hockey's been, especially my Rangers. I mean, It's been a fun ride so far. Yeah, I know that's not your team, but been a fun ride with some overtime games going to Game 7, big Game 2 tonight. So that's where my attention's been when not on baseball.
Game 1 overtime was fun.
Yeah, well, not at the end.
It was a nice one too. If you're a New York sports fan, and I know it's probably a limited portion of our audience, but the Hurricanes tied it with like 2 minutes left, and at the exact same moment, Max Scherzer starts, yelling at the dugout, "I'm out," and I'm done. And now he's out for 2 months. So yeah, it's nice 1-2 for New York sports, a span of about 60 seconds there. All right, let's get to the Athletics and Angels. Paul Blackburn goes for Oakland. Chase Silseth going for the Angels. Athletics, Angels. Anaheim's always someone you got to keep an eye on, right?
Oh,
Power bats.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of excellent bats in that lineup, as we all know. Taylor Ward only pulling 3.4% ownership for 5,400 up top on DK, 4,400, 6.1% on FanDuel. That's kind of interesting to me, especially with Trout and Ohtani sitting right behind him, both in the 17s on DK and over 20% on FanDuel. It's just a little weird that he's getting kind of left behind in that group because of how spectacular he's been. 375, 488, 721 slugging, a 346 ISO, a 249 WRC plus. I'm laughing because those numbers are just mind-bogglingly good. Putting him together with Trout and Ohtani, he helps offset some of that ownership if you can figure out a way to afford it. He's very expensive, but Anthony Rendon under-owned, underpriced in the back end of that combo. Jared Walsh, Brendan Marsh are playable there. So I do think there's ways to string that Angels lineup together. Paul Blackburn, 20.4% strikeout rate so far this year, has been good at keeping guys off base. No walks to speak of, 0.90 whip, but kind of a targetable pitcher, just not a high-end pitcher overall. I know we've gotten away with value on him in the past every now and then, but really he's a guy we can throw some bats at here. They're getting a little attention on the Trout Ohtani part of it, but everybody else is low owned. So pick your spots. I definitely think we can deploy some Angels. I won't have much Blackburn. Silseth, kind of maybe interesting prospect arm, but even against this Athletics lineup, I don't know how many shots I'll take. It looks like a lot of the field's going there. 25% on at 7,800 on DK, 6,400 on FanDuel, 11.3% popular. I do think he's worth some darts because this Angels line or this Athletics lineup is just totally pathetic, but I don't know how much I really want to rely on him. Again, it's another spot where 7,800 is either the correct price or high. If he was 65, 64 on DK, something like that, I think he'd be a lot more interesting. He'd also probably be pushing like 50% popularity in this spot. So you take what you get with him. I think he's playable, but I don't love it.
It's a Friday night. Reed Ditmars a couple of weeks ago. So,
I mean, we were talking about, how things go against you when you make calls in baseball. I literally that same day about Detmers was saying the kid's got a big league ready curveball. That's why he looks so good in the minors, but none of the rest of the stuff is there yet. Went out and threw a no-hitter.
It's just the way it goes, man. He gave up bullets all day, 2 strikeouts.
Right, exactly. 2 strikeouts.
It's not bad analysis.
But I'm sitting there,
balls hit right at everybody.
That's it. But I love that about baseball. So I was sitting there rooting for the kid to pull it off and make me look silly. It's just gotta love that about baseball.
No, that's the way it goes. Going against Silseth with this Athletics offense. I mean, like you said, they stink a little bit. They don't have a whole lot to target here. The implied run total isn't looking all that great either at 3.14. You don't want to be sitting there around pi when we're doing these things. So where are we at on the A's offense here? And then we'll get to our final game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really thin with these guys. I think that Ramon Laureano is very cheap for his talents in general, but it has not been there in the comeback so far. So I don't know how much I would take that. It would probably be in like one-off form. If I need a super cheap one-off, I might say like, oh, there's Ramon Laureano. That could be somewhat interesting hitting fifth. Seth Brown is drawing an okay power mark in my home run index. The only guy with an above average home run opportunity here. He's super cheap, very low owned. I would maybe one off those guys. I'm not looking to stack this team.
All right, the people want dongs, and I did not account for a whole lot of dong talk here, which is my fault. So we'll quickly go through the Giants and the Padres here. I end up with a lot of Jake Junis. What do you make of him getting this spot against San Diego?
Yeah, it looks like he's drawing some popularity, which is kind of interesting. I think we need to get like a Blue Chew sponsorship or something before we're, doing dong talk on the show, by the way. But yeah, I think Junis is at least somewhat interesting here for 7,700, 22.5% strikeout rate, a 5% walk rate, 0.97 whip, and 11.5% swinging strike rate. The contact profile concerns me though. 45.6% hard hit, 12.3% barrels. That's in 20 and 2/3 innings. 2 of those are starts. He was operating as a bulk reliever for a little bit last year in 39 and a third, 6 starts, 24.4% strikeouts, similar contact profile. He's a limited pitcher, but I think he's at least serviceable enough at the price and the popularity that you can throw him at this Padres lineup. But I would hedge that with some Padres stacks coming back the other way. Maybe focus on the top. I've made Manny Machado my home run pick of the day. I do like him for a dong today, and I like the number that he's pulling there. Luke Voit is the only other above average home run mark on the board by the numbers, but everybody knows I think he's one of the most overrated players in baseball. So I don't really love Luke Voit.
Whoa! The chest hair popping out. You can't be talking against Luke Voit.
I will talk against Luke Voit for a long time.
He's the only guy I liked when he was a Yankee.
I'm glad he's a Padre. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right,
I'm actually surprised he's not a Met for whatever reason. I don't know. That just seemed like it would be a fit. So
I'd love it.
But yeah, you can have him.
Put him with Alonso.
They'd probably trade him to you pretty cheap now. But yeah, I think, Manny Machado, Jake Cronenworth, Eric Hosmer, with limited interest, Luke Voit, Will Myers, Jerkson Profar. You can make some stacks out of those guys with low expectations, but also low prices, low ownership to throw at Jake Junis here. And I definitely think the San Francisco bats are interesting against Sean Manaea, but I have Manaea as my top overall pitcher, as does the site today.
Top overall pitcher. Indeed. What do you love about it?
I think for one, he came through my model with a great projection today. He's going up against the Giants lineup that is tricky, does a lot of platoon work. We'll probably throw a lot of righty bats at him, but Manaea's been a consistently good starter over the last couple of seasons. This year, 28.7% strikeouts, a 3.22 xFIP, inducing a 13.4% swinging strike rate. He's given up some hard hit, 41.8% with an 8.2% barrel. It's not the best, but that's why I'll take out some shares of the Giants against him here. You can grab some, definitely Austin Slater, Darren Ruff, Wilmer Flores, Evan Longoria, the righties in the lineup, Joey Bart down the bottom, whichever lefties are in the lineup. I'm fine playing against the lefty, like Brandon Belt. I have no issues playing lefty, Brandon Crawford, fine going to those guys. So depending on the form of the lineup that comes out, I can take some Giant stacks, but I'm going to have a pretty significant amount of Manaea. That said, he is pulling a lot of ownership, so I would probably target to be below the field on him just because of the leverage situation and because there are other spots to spread out to on a night where there's not that premium ace who's going to hit that, major start. I do think a couple pitchers will put up a big score, but we don't have that like DeGrom level ace where you're just like that guy.
Yes.
Right? So it's that kind of slate.
Well, Manaea is a good spot to go. So that's your number one pitcher. Top dong. What we got? Where are the dongs?
So Machado was the guy that I picked for the article. The article doesn't necessarily get the top guy off the board. I do it, a little bit of feel, a little bit of analysis. So I went with Manny Machado there. If we're talking about the home run board overall, 2 Guardians at the top of it, Franmil Reyes and Jose Ramirez, who I mentioned in the Guardians section. Think they're a little bit interesting. And then we're looking at some Red Sox and some White Sox. We've got Rafael Devers. I went through the Red Sox, Devers, Martinez, and Dahlbeck all up there. And Luis Robert, Hunter Renfroe sitting in the middle of that equation from the Brewers side of things. Rowdy Tellez also up there in the 10s. If you're in our Discord, I put everybody over 10 into the Discord earlier in the day, so you can scroll up and check that out in the Discord. But that's a good handful of them. Your boy Luke Voit sitting at a 10.39, so I guess he's acceptable.
Lock him in. I like Byron Buxton, George Springer. Those are the 2 that I have popping today. Are they
love both of those
correlate a little bit? We talked about Buxton before. Springer, is he up there?
Buxton's right up there. I love both of those hitters in general. If Springer's not above a 10, which he might not be, he's got to be fairly close up here. He's a guy who always profiles well in my model. So definitely always like getting to Springer. And we talked about those Blue Jays a little bit cheap on this slate. The price on Vladdy was down a little bit. So that's a spot that I'm always happy to get to.
Yes, and I ended up getting to quite a few Toronto once I made my tweaks over the course of the show here. So just wrap up, we talked about Manaea a little bit. The top of your board is the pitchers, a couple of dongs, top stacks. We kind of build through it throughout the show. Give me, let's say 3 teams that you're really looking to pound tonight as far as top stacks.
Yeah, so we talked about the Brewers. I really like throwing some of their bats at Fede. They're getting a little bit of attention, but it's kind of limited in terms of nobody's getting massively overowned. So even the negative leverage situations, you can play any of these stacks. I'm not really concerned about the stack ownership tonight. So I can throw Milwaukee bats at Fede. You've got 2 very good teams, I think, at the top of the board in our probability rating that also happen to be positively leveraged. The really expensive Dodgers bats going against Ranger Suarez. And then the team that I wrote about as my featured stack, the Tampa Bay Rays going up against Tyler Wells. I think that's a really, really nice looking spot. They're not getting the attention that they should be getting. We talked about bats like Randy Arozarena and Mike Zunino on the right side of the plate. Definitely a lot of interesting hitters up and down that lineup. So I like getting the stacks of the Rays. The Twins were kind of interesting too. I'll throw them into the mix because they were pulling a lot of power, and they had that Kyle Garlick hitting second for the dead, or third for the dead minimum there. So that's kind of interesting up against Daniel Lynch as a little bonus there at the end.
All right, so there you go. Big night, Friday night. Grab your beer, hang out, watch the baseball. You got another 10 to 15 minutes of work here, and then we're all locked up and making it happen. Give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways. And once you do subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. And there are lots of shows going live here in Awesemo DFS. We have a ton still to come. 5 minutes from now, NBA Deeper Dive starts up with Lofty and Adam. So be locked in for that. Stick around. Terry McBride killing it tonight. Appreciate it, bud. And look forward to seeing you in the Hall of Fame soon.
There you go. If I'm in the Hall of Fame, tweet those screenshots at Awesemo HOF, and we'll get somebody raffled off a win.
Get it done.
Hopefully one of you guys does it.
Hey, thanks for you guys getting involved in the chat. Have a good night. All right.